Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is slightly overdue, but I still wanted to film it. This is my March wrap-up. This was an interesting month of reads. I had some disappointing reads, some DNFs, some of my first DNFs of the year, so I'm going to take you through all of it. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on any other videos from me, and without further ado, let's get into the video. In March, I finished 7 books total. 4 of them were books on my top TBR for 2024, which is exciting. I'm now halfway through that, which is super fun. And I had 2 DNFs and no 5 stars this month. Actually, that's not true. I lied. I had 1 5-star this month. Hoping to get some more 5 stars in April. Okay, gonna go chronologically like I usually do and let you know what I thought about all these books I read. So the first 2 books I finished in March were Ella Enchanted and Cinder. If you haven't seen it already, I made a video where I read Cinderella retellings, and these were 2 of the 3 books I read. So I'll link that in the card so you can go watch it because I think it was a really fun video. But the first one I finished was Ella Enchanted. This was like sweet little youth fiction retelling of Cinderella. Again, if you want more about these books, you can go watch that video. My general opinions were that it was sweet. I liked it, but it was just like not my favorite book ever. I rated this 3.75 stars. I definitely wish that I had read this when I was a kid, but it was a fun book. This was my favorite book I read from that video that I did. This is called Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and this is part of the Lunar Chronicles series. So I think there are 3 or 4 other books that are different fairy tale retellings, which is cool. But they all kind of follow the same universe, plot line, whatever. But this one was like really enticing, and the whole time I was like, what's gonna happen next? I felt like I really needed to keep reading because I was really enjoying it. I rated this book a 4 stars, and I am planning on reading the rest of the series eventually. Really enjoyed this one. Next, I read some more historical fiction. I read a lot of historical fiction this month. The first one was The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society, and I have had this on my shelf for so long. This book I feel like is kind of like a classic. Like, it's in every single used bookstore. I feel like so many people have read this, and I have to watch the movie now again that I've read the book. But it was a book told in like correspondence, letters back and forth about post World War II, and I just thought it was a really sweet book. And the story behind this book is that Marianne Schaefer had started writing it and was almost done with it, but then passed away. And then her niece, who's Annie Barrows, who, if you don't know, is also the author of Ivy and Bean. If you read those books as a kid, I loved those books. Finished it for her, like edited it and finished it and published for her. So I thought that was very sweet, but I really did enjoy this book. I rated it a 4 stars. It didn't give me any 5-star feelings. It was sweet, it was fun, but it wasn't like incredible, but it was a good book. I would recommend it. Next, I read The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, and this was my first disappointment of the month. I was really excited about this book. It was the Barnes & Noble book of the year last year. It ended up being my book club pick for March, and I thought it would be really, really good, and unfortunately it was not. I think that somebody in my book club had said that it reminded them of a book that was written like it was trying to be a classic, and James McBride has been writing books for a long time. Like, he's a very well-known author. I really did enjoy the writing in here. I thought the writing style was really good and really well done. However, the plot was just like not there, and it was so weird because it was set up like the first couple like pages was like set up like it was going to be a murder mystery, but it was more like a portrait of a town. And I kind of think if I went in expecting it to be like not super plot heavy, that I would have enjoyed it more. But because I thought it was going to be such a like sort of like a mystery book, and it absolutely wasn't, I think I was kind of disappointed in that way. But the writing was good. I liked like the character building, and it was very like each chapter was sort of about a different character in this town and how they all kind of like live together. And I don't know, I definitely wish that I enjoyed this more than I did. If you're thinking about reading it, I would recommend picking it up and trying it, but just go in knowing that there's not going to be a lot of plot, because then maybe you'll enjoy it more than I did. I ended up rating this a 3.5 stars. Next was the first book I DNF'd. I don't think I've actually DNF'd a book yet this year. I'm trying to remember if there's been one, but if it has, it's been like I read a couple pages and it was like not for me. This book that I DNF'd, I read about 70 or 80 pages of, and it's like 2 perspectives, different like one was set in like the 2010s and one was set in the 17 or 1800s, and the first chapter was the more present day perspective, and I was like getting into that story a little bit, and then when it went to the second chapter in the past perspective, I like did not care at all what was going on, and I went back and forth a couple times, like read like 4 or 5 chapters and really just like did not care about the other perspective. And there's a possibility that I could come back to this book in the future. I'm not like completely writing it off, but I don't, it's just such a big book, and I thought it was going to be kind of similar to the Heaven and Earth grocery store where like not a lot was happening, and it started off really sad too, so maybe I'll come back to it, but for now I am DNFing this book, so no rating. I didn't read the whole book. The next book I finished was No Landing by Isaiah Hines, which if you watched my March TBR video, you would know that this is my boyfriend's brother's book. It's a book of poems, and if you would like to buy it, I will make sure I have the link down below. It was great. I would love to sit down with them and like talk to them and understand what all these poems were about, but it was cool because there were some poems in there about like their family and that sort of thing, which is fun because I like know their family, so I really enjoyed those poems the most. But super smart book, and Isaiah's working on another book of poems now, so anyway, I'd recommend checking it out. This is the book I gave 5 stars this month. The next book, which was the other book closest to a 5-star for me last month, was The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. I really enjoyed this book. It was heavy and very sad, and I knew it was going to be sad, but it was just a very sad book. But I loved watching the main character grow. Like, you see him when he's a very young kid. He moves to the US from Afghanistan when he's like 18 with his dad, and so you see like his transition from childhood and then to adulthood, moving to the US, and how his life happens as an adult and all of this. It's just like interesting watching him sort of redeem himself after some things that happened when he was a kid, and like learn more about the history of Russia invading Afghanistan, which it wasn't a heavy point in this book. And when I was looking at Goodreads reviews, one of the criticisms I saw was that this glazed over a lot of that stuff, but I do think that the point of this book was to be more of like a character study and to be about mostly about the main character, and I think the author did a good job incorporating the history in it while not making it seem like super full of history, if that makes sense. But I really enjoyed it. It gave me like a good base knowledge of something that I didn't know about before, and I listened to a lot of this, which I really enjoyed because it's read by the author, and that way all of the words that weren't in English were pronounced correctly, which like obviously in my head I don't know Farsi, so I wouldn't know how to pronounce this word, so I appreciate that listening to an audiobook especially. But the audiobook was great, and I would definitely recommend this book if it's been on your list for a while. I never had to read it in high school, so I'm glad I got to pick it up now, and I rated this one a 4.75 stars. Didn't give me the 5-star feeling, but I thought it was a fantastic book. The next book was my other DNF of the month, which is the Air Raid Book Club. I've read maybe like 30 or 40 pages of this, and it's a story about this woman who has this bookstore during World War II in London, and her husband dies and she has to run the bookstore by herself, and I imagine she makes a book club. I thought it was going to be really cool because it was like a book about a bookstore. I love that sort of genre. However, I could not get into the writing style. It was like so fluffy. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just like, I really didn't like it, and I didn't think that I could read a whole book like that just for like the fun idea of a plot, since there are just so many books to read. So I decided to DNF this. I will be getting rid of this copy, so I'm just gonna go into a little free library around here somewhere, but I would maybe pick it up again if I like see somebody I know recommend it to me or something like that, but I don't think the writing style was for me. which is kind of a bummer. I was like excited about this one, but so what? Like I said, there's so many books to read in this lifetime that I cannot force myself to trudge through bad books. And the last book that I finished in March was Transcendent Kingdom by Yaxi. This book was so good. The reason I read this book was because one of my favorite books ever is called Homegoing by the same author. Phenomenal book. If you haven't read that, you have to go read that. It was like one of the best books ever. That book was more like historical, like it went through different families and like starting all the way in like 16 or 1700 to present day. This one was all like one character present day, so it's more like contemporary fiction, and it was really well done. I love a book that's like, it was again sort of like a character study. The main character, her brother dies of an overdose when she's younger, and then in present day her mom is living with her as she's doing her PhD research. Our main character, not the mother, and she is sort of working through the trauma of her childhood, and her PhD research is testing addiction in rats, and so heavy connection between what she's doing for her research and what her childhood was like. And so you go back and forth to like what's happening in her present day and stories about her childhood. And I love a book that's sort of like back and forth like that, where it's not like separate chapters or anything, but just like a lot of flashbacks. And I thought that they wove together really well with the present day story. I just think this like idea was executed super well. Nothing was like too heavy-handed, and like the themes like stayed the same throughout, which I love when everything sort of connects. So I would definitely recommend this book. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. I also really liked the audiobook, and another bonus about this book is all the chapters were like only a few pages, so it was pretty easy to get through. Those are all of the books that I read in March. Hoping for some more 5-star reads in April. Again, if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe down below. I just posted my April TBR video, so make sure you watch that so you can see what books I'm thinking of picking up in April. So far, so good. I'm enjoying them. See you guys next time. Bye, friends!